can make it happen. It's not
Hmm.
impossible. And don't let statistics or preconceived
Mm.
notions, misconceptions scare you away from pursuing it if you really are passionate about this and feel that this is what you're called to do.
I love that. Such great advice. And it's really true. Sometimes we're so afraid to take the first step when that's really just the greatest barrier that we have to overcome. Welcome to Fortune Podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Elijah. Today we have an amazing, amazing guest and super boss and producer. This conversation is going to empower you. Everybody, please welcome Brett Takeshita. Hey, Brett.
Hey, Jessica, thank you so much for having me. That's the nicest intro. I so appreciate that.
I'm so happy that you're here and you more than deserve it. And everybody will see why as we continue to conversate. How are you today?
So good. I'm just really excited to chat with you. I'm honored. Yeah, and for everybody who's watching or listening, but Jessica and I go way back, so this is just like serendipitous to have us, come back together because we went strong in the LMU days, you know?
Yes. So tell them a little bit more how we like know each other, maybe how we got to like connect and work with one another.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I remember Jessica was always the smartest person in every class. And she was note taking like crazy, and I was like, I need to be friends with her because she's going places. But yeah, I feel like didn't we not really have classes together until like our last 2 years, really?
Yeah. Yeah. So how we connected is just even like
It's
crazy.
Yeah, I think we had a couple of classes, but I remember when Jessica was doing her junior thesis to get a guy, right? And
Hmm.
we had, so she asked for some help with casting, and we just had the best time because it was truly such a huge ensemble, but the movie was so fun and so cute, and Jessica did a great job. And I was like, we became so close there, and we were just like, let's keep working
Yes.
together. And, we have
Yes.
made it happen, which is great.
Which I love. That was such a fun process. I just remember you were just so great, so amazing. And Brett, you guys will see, he's just way too humble. Like, he's that man. So I'm so happy to have you here. And I'm happy that we've stayed connected all this time, even though we don't talk all the time. But whenever we do, it's like time never passed.
Yeah, truly. I know. Pick up right after the pieces. Whenever you're in LA, we could go hop over to church together. So fun. So yeah,
Church buddy, brunch buddy, work buddy, like
exactly.
we're connected.
Yeah.
So, taking it back to the very, very beginning, what did you want to be growing up?
Yeah. So I was kind of all over the place, but when I was in elementary school, I loved movies so much that I was like, okay, I either want to do video games because I love video games, or I want to be a movie critic. And my parents are like, okay, cool. And then after that, when I was in high school, I was like, you know what? I think I want to be a therapist. I want to go into psychology. And I don't even know if you knew that, but I was so
I
dead
didn't.
set. I was so dead set and had the idea that I was going to be a psych major and explore that. But then once I started really researching colleges and figuring out, what majors are out there, I was like, wait, like film is actually a thing. Like I knew loosely that it was, but I was like, you can actually practically like be a production major and try to make a movie. And I
Right.
said, you know what? Maybe I'll do that. And
Yeah.
I had no film experience whatsoever. But going into college, I was like, hey, mom, dad, I love movies, so I want to be a production major. And you could tell they were like, oh, okay. Like they
Uh,
were they were like I was very blessed because my parents were very supportive, but you could tell
yeah.
they had the apprehension of like, okay, this is a risk. And just like how do we make sure that you love what you do and are going to be passionate but
Mhm.
also be okay. So I wasn't
Right.
I know some people really had the struggle of like their parents heart out were like, no, you're not going to do that because it's a
Right.
but you and I both made it work, and we we both still tapped into these skill sets, which has been great because it's been so vital for our careers, that foundation. But
Right.
yeah, psychology, we'll definitely talk about how low key you have to do psychology, play therapist all the time in the industry, as you know. So that foundation still comes through, but also too, I love Jessica, the queen of humble, where you're like, yeah, I'll do film school, but also let me throw in a double major. Let me do some poli sci and let me get my MBA in business. It's just like, oh my gosh, what, how? There are not enough hours in the day, but you did it with so much grace and class, and it was so cool and inspiring to see. So I hope you give yourself some kudos.
Aw, thank you so much. I think it's hard, like, for yourself, even as I said the same about you. Sometimes you're like, me? I'm seeing that about you, and vice versa. So maybe it's like millennials just need to get over this imposter syndrome, whatever, whatever. We could have like 10,000 degrees, have flown to space and come back, and we're still like, I don't know if this
Right?
is me.
Exactly.
So
I know. Yeah.
so we'll work on that. So kind of taking it also to back to our conversation, like, how was your upbringing like? How was home like? Did you have any siblings? What did your parents do for work? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, so my family life, I came from a really close, tight-knit family. So we were all born and raised Southern California, so very, very native Los Angelinos. But yeah, so I had my mom and dad. My dad was an optometrist. My mom, she was mostly a stay-at-home mom, but did a lot of just outside ventures with like
Mhm.
real estate and some teaching and stuff like that. And then my sister, she was older sister by 3 years. She went to UCLA, very academic, where she
Nice.
studied psych, funny enough, and Asian American studies. So she double
Yes.
majored in those. And yeah, I was kind of the creative oddball of the group.
I'm happy. I was nervous there when you said your dad was an optometrist. I'm like, oh Lord, did he want you to follow in his footsteps or what was that? But luckily they were supportive, it seems like.
Yeah, it's funny because my dad would always jokingly say, like, "Hey, do you want to go be an eye doctor?" And I said, "Absolutely not. I get grossed up enough by putting contacts in my eyes, so no."
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I was very fortunate because I know certain parents, especially in professional careers, do that. Also, it's very real in like Asian culture,
Of
or even
course.
just I feel like people of color in
Mhm.
general, right? When they have professional career paths, they want the same for their kids. But I was very, I guess, being fourth generation Japanese American, it's a little
Mhm.
bit different. But yeah, my parents were very supportive and saying like, hey, life's too short and you have to do what you want to do and it's not what you feel like you should do.
I love
Because yeah,
that.
so I was very grateful.
It's refreshing to hear that perspective. I think it does help, in my opinion, that your parents were kind of like already generations out. They weren't like the first generation that came to the States. I think that also helps to refresh. And then also growing up in Southern California where you want to do film, but it's film is also accessible. So
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that. With that, how did you choose Loyola Marymount University?
Yeah, so it's a very different time then as it is now because
Yeah.
LMU, it continually gets so competitive. I mean,
Hmm.
every single year ranking as one of the top 10 film schools in the nation. I feel like a lot of people don't even realize that, but
Right.
LMU had such a great film program. It was one of the only schools that didn't require an extensive portfolio
Yeah.
to get into the program. And for me, I went to a small private Christian school that didn't
Hmm.
have classes for film or anything like that at
Hmm.
that time. So I was
Hmm.
like, I don't have this huge massive portfolio that a school like NYU would require, and they just required a couple of extra essays and stuff about like, hey, why do you really want to do this, and sort of tap into your creative abilities as just like, I think, writing and storytelling in general. So I was able to submit that application. I got waitlisted but
Okay.
eventually got in, and I said
Yes.
this is fantastic. And it was a risk for me because again,
Right.
I was like, hey, I don't really know if I'm gonna like this or not. Like, I just know I love movies and I love the idea of it. But I said, this is such a great program, and it'd be, silly for me not to at least take a chance on it and see. And I was
Yes.
like, I could change majors if I don't
Right.
like this. But yeah, it was a really great opportunity that I got to take advantage of.
I'm so happy you did that. And I'm so happy that I also did. LMU was actually the very, very last school that I applied to. I had applied to USC, Stanford, like just different schools and like different places, got in, and my parents were like, "You about to turn down Stanford? Are you sure?" And I'm like, "I really want to do film." I was like, "I can go to USC or LMU," but once I got on that campus, I'm like, "Oh, I'm happy I applied."
Yeah,
And then as
it's
I met
such
so
a
many colleagues, like, yeah,
And that's the thing too is like, we could talk about it later, but where you go to school and stuff, it has to feel right for
yeah,
you, right?
yeah,
Like it's incredible that you got accepted into so many different schools. And
hmm,
there's other people too I knew at LMU that were like, yeah, I got accepted at like Ivy Leagues and
hmm,
SC and UCLA. And it's like, but this felt right to me. And it
right,
ended up being the right place. So it's
yeah,
like really not being impacted or trying to avoid
hmm,
being impacted by people that say like might have a misconception about like, oh, you're going to a school that is not as good as another or whatever. It's all
right.
subjective.
Yeah, it's so true. Sometimes they value status and prestige, but you really have to like feel that that's the place for you. Because no matter what your experience is, you know that I chose that school. So you know what I'm saying? Like if
Right.
anything happens, it wasn't by force.
Yeah.
So with that, what is your current role now?
Yeah, so right now I am the original content manager at Tubi. So Tubi, I'm sure a lot of you guys hopefully know by now, but it is a big streaming service. We're completely free, no subscriptions required. So I'm a creative executive on the original side. So that
Yes.
means shepherding and overseeing projects all the way from pitch and concept all the way to them premiering and delivering. So it's really being creatively involved in every step of the process, screenwriting, production, prep, post, score, VFX, all that stuff. You're literally touching a little bit of everything, which is what I love doing. So, and yeah, we have a ton of originals that we have done. Of almost 40 movies that I did last year premiered, which was a huge number. And yeah, we're continuing to do a lot. So it's very exciting.
That's also amazing. So if you can you walk me through your career like progress from the moment you graduated LMU to where you are today?
Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, I know that you, Jessica, know how hard you have to work throughout school. It goes
Right.
beyond education and just books,
Yeah.
right? So, I started working in the industry while I was in college, and I said I have a lot of catching up to do. So, I took upon a lot of production internships, development. I did music videos for a little bit.
Mhm.
And then you and I both would work on a lot of student sets on the
Yeah.
weekends and all that stuff. It was just crazy. But yeah, I like to really keep busy. And then after I graduated, I thought that I would be freelancing for forever. So I was working on producing,
Mhm.
writing, directing a lot of my own content. A lot of people that we worked with at LMU, I kept those
Okay.
relationships going with film
Yeah.
school, which is great. And we have mutual friends like Melissa Effa, who's amazing,
Mhm.
and
Yes.
doing stuff with her and some of the other peers. So basically, I was making a whole bunch of content and I would sell it. So I'd partner with Funny or Die. We did,
Mhm.
Melissa had the deal with the Urban Movie Channel, and
Yeah.
it was really exciting. So working with big groups. And then after about 3 years, my previous sort of mentor slash supervisor of my old internship, he said, "Hey Brett, I've been following what you've been doing. I think it's really cool that you're working on all these projects. Would you be interested at all in working in development at Hallmark Channel? Because Hallmark is looking to expand their development sector, and he would take me on as a junior executive to help
Mhm.
oversee projects very similarly to Tubi from concept all the way through delivery of the movie."
Wow.
And I was actually kind of afraid to leave the freelancing style where you
Mm.
have so much flexibility and
Mhm.
you can make your own hours and choose your own thing. And I said, you know what? I feel like I want to take a risk. So I said, yeah, let me interview. So I went through a few rounds of interviews. I got the job. And yeah, that brought me to Hallmark, where I was making movies that probably your grandma enjoys around Christmas time.
And me
But
too.
don't discredit it. Yeah, so yeah, I worked there for 3.5 years making a ton of movies, tons of rom-coms, a few cozy mysteries, dramas, all that
Mhm.
stuff. And it was truly just a great training ground where I got to apply a ton of the freelance knowledge that I learned in terms of producing and overseeing and communicating, knowing the right people, and that translated really well to Hallmark, where I was similarly, shepherding on behalf of the network a ton of content that needed to be
Wow.
put out there and seen.
Wow, and when you say a ton, like, can you quantify it or, like, ballpark? What are we talking about? Because some people might think a ton is like, yeah, maybe 5 movies a year, but I don't think that's your definition.
That was definitely not the definition. So at Hallmark, in terms of development slate, where not every project was super active at the same, but you have concepts that are greenlit or whatever. I would have a docket of about 40 something projects.
Wow.
So you are juggling at Hallmark sometimes, and it's crazy that Tubi is just as similarly paced, if not faster paced. But at
Wow.
Hallmark, at most, I would have maybe 4 movies shooting at one time. So the amount of scripts that you're going through, people that you're hiring, creative conversations that we're having, we could get more into the minutia of my job, but
Yeah.
yeah, you really can never be bored because you have so many projects that you're overseeing and shepherding. And yeah,
Wow.
it's a great position to have, but also a ton of responsibility. So yeah.
That's a lot. I know we'll get into, like, how you were able to juggle. I mean, we could do it right now real fast. Like, how are you able to juggle? Because you're not just coming in as, like, like, you're coming from start to finish, working with executives, working with some, I'm sure, producers, talent, handling all the conversations or at least overseeing them. So how do you balance 40 projects in a year?
I would like to think I'm very organized, so I try
Yes.
to really I keep track of all of my projects and the process. I have very specific ways of doing it, but I set a
Mhm.
lot of deadlines for myself. If I have slower periods, then I say like, "Oh, what can I be doing to get ahead of things?" So,
Mhm.
taking on writer producer meetings, meeting with actors and talent, and really just trying to always keep forward momentum going. So I would say it
Mhm.
takes a lot of, and sometimes you just purely have hard deadlines that you have to
Yeah.
hit, right? Where it's like
Mhm.
our boss and our constant strategy is like, hey, we need X amount of thrillers and horror movies by this month. So I'm like,
Right.
okay, we got to keep the train rolling. How are we going to make some of these numbers work? And yeah, it's a lot of self discipline, but also just
Right.
driving towards dates that have to be met, but also make sense.
Right. And obviously you continued on to Tubi. So at what point in Hallmark did you understand, like, wow, actually I think I can do this. I think I like this, cuz you went from freelance to now a position that's like in one, like, company, set time and hours. I'm sure multiple, like, longer hours than expected. So at what point were you like, this is exactly what I need to be doing?
Yeah, so I really loved the process from the network side of things of getting to spearhead and touch a whole bunch of projects. And I mean, Jessica, about my producing background, right?
Mhm.
Where you're so ingrained in it, but
Mhm.
the lifestyle of being on set every single day, those long hours of
Yeah.
sometimes 12, 14, 16-hour days, and
Yeah.
the not getting to see family and friends and all that stuff, traveling, it can be great sometimes, other times it could be really hard.
Yeah.
So when I realized that there was a job that was, you know, arguably 9 to 5, generally, but when you have that set schedule, but also it's like I get to do all the high level stuff that I love, but also get to trust certain people to take care of the on the ground running stuff.
Mhm.
And it's still such a creative, collaborative process. So it kind of married both worlds of like I get consistency and structure, but
Mhm.
without sacrificing everything that I love doing on the freelance side as well.
Yes. I love that. So then from there, how did you get connected to your position at Tubi? And when did you know it was the right time to leave Hallmark?
Yeah, so Hallmark, I had the best experience. It was
Mhm.
actually such a challenging job, but I'm so grateful for all that I learned there. And funny enough, one of the producers that I worked with pretty frequently at Hallmark, he contacted me and said, "Hey, Tubi is expanding their originals department. They're looking to do more because the first year they only did 30, almost 30, and then it ended up being like over 100 the following year, which is when I started getting working at Tubi. But he said, Tubi, I know some great people there, and this could be a good fit for you. I'm not sure if you're looking, but would you like me to put your name in on their docket and see if there's any
Mhm.
interest there? And I said, yeah, I would love to, because as much as I loved Hallmark, and it could have been comfortable to stay there because
Mhm.
as crazy as the job can be, exactly
Right.
what you're going to do, right?
Yes.
For me, I said, I want to explore different things. I need to challenge and grow myself. So Tubi felt like the right place, because I'm like, creatively, I'm going to be touching a whole bunch of different projects. I'm
Right.
going to have a whole bunch of a different network that I'm going to tap into. Tubi
Mhm.
is also tech and streaming side, so pushing myself to learn, what's forward thinking in terms of where entertainment is going to go. And yeah,
Right.
it just felt like the right time. So I had multiple interviews at Tubi, but after hearing more about the brand, seeing what they were doing, and feeling like it was the right time for me to challenge myself and take some of that
Mhm.
risk, that's what I decided to do. And I'm really glad that I did it.
I'm happy you did too, because a lot of people, once they like get in a job, they can tend to feel very comfortable there, especially when they like know the people. Everything is good to them. There's really no other reason except for like growth and challenging yourself and maybe expanding to different genres of film, because Hallmark, you know what you're gonna get.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then doing like thriller and now more things there. So I'm sure like it's a different experience. And I'm happy that you challenge yourself. The reason I point that out is there's a lot of people who are on autopilot, just stuck at their job, and might needs to hear that, oh, somebody even at your level could leave a job just to challenge themselves, even though there's nothing wrong. So changing the narrative that nothing has to be wrong in order to move on and grow and learn more in your career.
Yeah, I think it's so important, like very well said. And I mean, Jessica, too, how you have personally just pushed yourself so far to try different ventures and do things. And
Hmm.
it's like, yeah, that's what we should be doing, especially when we're young and we have time and means and opportunities to do things. It's like,
Yeah,
why stay stagnant, right? I think it's
it's
you and I
true.
share that personal and spiritual philosophy of continually
Right.
growth and challenge and change, which is a good thing, even though it's uncomfortable or scary sometimes.
Right. Was there ever a point in your career, or like even if it's like the time when you were like doing a lot of freelance, that you felt like, oh, when am I ever gonna make it? Because freelance, it sounds sexy to the ear, but it's really challenging because you don't know where your next thing is coming from. Things are net 30, net 60, and young people living in LA. So like, how did you handle those moments, and like what did you lean on?
Yeah, I definitely struggle, especially on the freelance side, when you're in between gigs, right? Because they always say when it rains, it pours. Sometimes you'll
Yeah.
get a whole bunch of gigs back to back and you're booked for months, or you have to start turning down jobs because everybody wants to shoot at the same time. And then you'll
Hmm.
lapse and it'll go for months where you don't have work. It's very
Right.
scary. And then sometimes too, you're like, wait, what should I be doing? You feel like this obligation of like, I need to get back to work really quickly, or
Hmm.
I'm going to drain my resources, or is this for me? A lot of people, when they have that extended period, they doubt if they're in the right field, if they need to
Hmm.
jump ship. But I said, what can I control? I can still continue to leverage friendships with people, tap into my network, see what's out there, focus on personal time, and
Hmm.
really taking advantage of like, oh, these are times I could study, read,
Right.
research, know things. But also too, the thing that I encourage a lot of people in the industry that are freelancers, and I know you know this too, is
Hmm.
just if even if there's not paid work, if it's passion projects or whatever, where people say
Hmm.
like, hey, I have no money, but I really want to work with you on something. If I had those down periods, or even sometimes if I didn't, but I still just really believed in that person and that project, I said, hey, yeah,
Hmm.
I really want to work on this with you. I think this will be great. And it's going to be a grind, but I don't mind not getting paid. And those opportunities always paid off in the long run, because they
Right.
every single time either the projects took off and those people brought me onto more things, or
Hmm.
you connected with people on those sets, or behind the scenes that brought you onto other things. And I
Hmm.
think that's one of the most beautiful things about the film industry is, it's so collaborative, and when you find people that you really love working with, I really try to shepherd it, and I know other people too, where it's like, "Hey, let's grow together. You
Right.
were my person. You were there for me when nobody else believed in me, so I'm gonna bring you with
Yeah.
me," and vice versa. I'm like, "Yeah, these are the people that I wanna continue to have relationships and work with." And I mean, we were just talking on the phone the other day about like, "Yeah, let's make a movie together. Let's manifest
Yes.
that," you know? So,
Because we really can. We have access to so many resources, but that's one thing I love and appreciate about you, Brett. Like, I know we were both kind of like grinding at that time, but we like, connected with each other, would hang out, go to church, like, work on our personal development, work on film sets together, like, even if it wasn't paid, but like just helping out one of your friends with a web
yeah.
series or anything like that. So, I think that's an important point because sometimes people can just be so stuck on, oh, I only need paid work, but they don't see like the value of, okay, you can invest in a person. Like even when investors invest in businesses, they also look at the person who they're investing in as well, like the CEO
Mhm.
or whoever is like spearheading it. So and especially in a place like LA, that's why for me, I mean, nobody had to tell me I'm always the kind of person that's always kind to everybody, but especially in LA, be good to people because you never know. Somebody
Yeah.
that appears like nothing today can be everything tomorrow. So I like that philosophy of collaboration and reaching out. I honestly wish I had your outlook, Brett, because you were like, oh, let's lean into personal time and family. I was depressed. I was like,
Hey,
how
I've
can I
been through
make
those
it?
faults too. Yeah.
So, it's not until later that I realized, okay, sometimes you get into a full time job and you're like, okay, if I wasn't working this 9 to 5, what would I be doing? And then when you do have those like down periods, it's like, are you doing those things that you would have? Are you writing scripts if you're in film? Are you reaching out to people? Are you networking? Are you reading, filling up yourself with knowledge? Whether that be like talking to people in the industry, networking, going to events, getting a degree, like however that looks like for you. So I like that you had that head on your shoulders so early. I was a little late, but I got there eventually.
Also, the power of therapy. Can we give
Yeah.
it up for therapy and
Talk about
mental
it.
health? It's so important. I'm like, yeah, I definitely have to do a lot of self-reflection and work there just to get through. Yeah, it's hard times, you know? So,
Yeah. It's not easy. And especially like today, now it feels like a lot of people are entering into like freelance with all the layoffs and everything going on. People, even with a full time job, they still kind of feel like freelancers, like, okay, I got to always be looking out for the next thing just in case.
yeah.
So I like that perspective there. Did you ever have like a life coach or a career coach or a mentor? Like, what was your relationship with mentorship, or if at all?
Yeah, no life coach or anything
Okay.
like that, but it was really tapping into staying connected with all the people that I've met along the way. The people
Okay.
that at the internships, the people like the VPs or, higher ups that I really looked up to. It's like, yeah, I want
Mhm.
to continue relationships and periodically just check in and see what they're
Mm,
up to and what advice they can have. So, not even a sole mentor, but just a lot of different people that were meaningful to me that I know
got
we
it.
mutually cared about each other. And
Got it.
the one of the best pieces of advice that I've always gotten is, you know, you would be shocked. It's sometimes scary to reach out to people or feel like, oh, like, do they think that I want something, or are they
Yeah.
gonna think I'm needy or inferior? But it's like, no, people are so willing, I think, across any job industry to
Mhm.
give back to younger people.
Right.
You can give a 15-minute phone call to someone to check in and see how someone's doing. And I find like I love paying it forward and talking
Mhm.
to other students and stuff that want to pick my brain on things, and I still seek advice and counsel from other people that I work with too, that how they've managed or navigated certain career paths or specific
Right.
days. So yeah, like, don't be afraid to reach out to people because I think it's so important and also really valued on both ends.
Yeah. And that's one thing I've come to learn. I was just talking to my friend about this past weekend, and I was telling her one of my, like, not really regrets, but one of the things I wish I had done sooner was not think that I was a bother. I think with LA, especially in the film industry and entertainment, there's so many people that feel like, opportunists, which I guess is not really a bad thing, but a lot of the connections would sometimes feel like inauthentic. Like, they lead with, what do you do for work? How many followers do you have? And you're like, So
Yeah.
for me, I was like, I'm not gonna ask for anything. Even if I like had friends, I'm not asking for anything. But I didn't realize like how that could be, getting in the way of your own growth. Obviously, you have your friendships, you have people that you're networking in. So I don't know. I wish I knew where that stigma of like, just kind of keep your head down, just like work, don't really bother people, because that's a lie. I know, like, when people reach out to me, I'm so happy to help them. So definitely, I love that, like what you're saying, because sometimes we could have it on our way, but it's mutual. People love to pay it forward because somebody most likely did that for them at an earlier stage of their career.
Absolutely. And this is a little piece of advice giving that I give to young
Yeah.
people too. But when I'm reaching out for like even an informational interview or a meeting with someone, I think leading with transparency, right? Because you were just
Right.
talking about Jessica, like, oh, are certain people inauthentic, or what do they actually want when they reach out? Like, do they want to
Mm-hmm.
be my friend? Do they just
Mm-hmm.
want something from me? But
Right.
I'm very transparent about certain people where I'll just say, I'll lead and preface with like, "Hey, I'm not seeking a job from you. I don't want anything except I would love, you know, 10 minutes of your time to hop on a Zoom and talk about your
Mm-hmm.
career. I'm very inspired by what you're doing. I would love to hear from you about what you're working on or anything like that." And when people have that mindset of transparency, right? Of like, "Oh
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they're literally not asking for anything except they've done some homework on me and they like me or whatever." Then they could go and with that peace of mind instead of that awkwardness of having to figure out like what do
Right.
we actually want from each other.
Right. I love that. I think that's great advice. Everybody should be taking notes, myself included. So I think that's amazing advice. So, with how busy that you are now, how do you handle kind of like navigating, maintaining like personal relationships, professional relationships? Because if I heard you right, you're doing like 40 plus movies a year. So, do you sleep? Like, how do you take, you look like you're healthy and doing well. So, either tell us your secret or like how you balance or prioritize.
Yeah, it
I'm
is.
just like,
It's
let me
it's
know.
so hard. It's so hard, especially early on in your career. I feel like
Yeah.
I think you and I are both just such natural people pleasers and say
Yeah.
yes and all that stuff. And it's the hardest thing ever to set boundaries. And when
Yeah.
people started talking about boundaries in therapy, I was like, "What's a boundary? I don't even know what that
Same.
is." So
Didn't learn about it till 2020. I was like, oh, what's this word?
right, it's so crazy, and it's so hard, but that's what I've really tried to get better at, and, it's still something that I struggle with because I always
Yeah.
wanna say yes, but, I try to really plan out my days efficiently, but I also recognize the value of, like, hey, for me to do my best work, I cannot just be hunkered down at my computer all day.
Right.
So at nighttime after work, we're both huge advocates for, personal health, whether it's
Hmm.
physical or mental. But I'm like, I really need to step away from my computer for an hour or
Hmm.
two. The world's not going to end if I step away for a sec. I'm gonna go to the gym, do a little workout, or walk my dog and eat some good food and stuff like that because it is so easy to just get glued there. But I say,
It's
okay,
true.
I'll do that. I ask for if I need to. I don't think there's any weakness with asking for some grace with deadlines at work too. If
Okay.
people say like, "Hey, could you please get to this?" And there's sometimes, I'll get 5 drafts land on my desk the same day, and I'm like, "Hey,
Mm,
you guys, I'm really trying to prioritize, but in order for me to give my best works and feedback and
right.
notes and all that stuff, I need an extra day here," or
Got it.
whatever, or, I think it's all just about transparency and leading again with like, "Hey, this is the situation. How can I, in a positive way, help achieve what you're gonna need, but also what I need for myself." So yeah.
Right.
And then on the weekends too, unless it's before I would answer every email and stuff right away. But I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
if this can truly wait for if the world's not gonna end with me responding that night,
Right.
yeah, I'm not gonna respond.
Right.
And it can wait till Monday morning or whatever. And sometimes it's unavoidable, we get that. But yeah,
Hmm.
like I have never gotten pushback for people for taking some time for myself, and a lot of
Right.
people to actually really value that for you
Right.
saying I have a life outside of this job.
Right. And they'll respect you for that. And even just for, people pleasers, at first you might feel anxious doing that. Cause when I start to incorporate that, I'm like, okay, I'm taking like 3 hours thinking about should I have sent, like, responded to this email? Should I just respond? But kind of forcing yourself, even though it doesn't feel right. And then you'll kind of get used to it when you see that, oh, they're not overreacting. Oh, the world's still carried on. Oh, they could wait till Monday,
Yeah.
So knowing
Right.
that, like, just because somebody texts you or emails you on the weekend, it's not by force that you have to respond right away. It might be hard, but kind of continuing on to do that and
Yeah.
setting those boundaries, you'll see it gets easier over time. So it's like practice makes perfect with boundary setting. But
Yeah.
happy we got there, because how you wouldn't have a life, you would probably deteriorate with everything that's going on. So I'm
Yeah.
happy to hear that you've kind of championed that, and it all goes hand in hand with psychology. Maybe you need to write a book about how
Yeah.
you organize and set boundaries and handle these relationships.
Yeah. And you know what is such a cool thing though is I feel like in across every industry though, people are so much more aware of the importance of mental health and talking
Yeah.
about it, or work-life boundaries, and it's something that didn't really exist before previous generations. So the fact that people lead by example, like when my boss says,
Mhm.
"Yeah, like this does not have to be answered to today. You can wait till tomorrow. Like you're good." And I try to impart that too and establish that relationship and culture with other people, with the coordinators and interns and people that I work with. It's
Mhm.
passing that on too about like, "Hey, I want to take my weekend. I want to enjoy time with my family and friends. So I want you to do that too. Like this script, you do
Right.
not have to read this over the weekend. Take some time to refresh." Yeah, like passing on some gentleness and kindness, and I think everybody
Mhm.
starts to pay it forward because it's like, oh yeah, it's trickling down from the top.
Right. And I appreciate you doing that, especially as like in a managerial position, because I've definitely had some managers that were, I don't know if it was like a boomer thing, but they didn't understand that. And then you could, like, it could affect your health. Like, there
Oh
was times
yeah.
where I was getting almost like dizziness. I'm like, why is this happening? Realizing I'm glued to the computer, haven't drunk water, haven't really taken care of myself. But you can get so glued into your work, and it really does trickle down from the top. So I'm grateful that you as a manager are creating a new culture, and that like also allows people to extend grace to one another, and then the work gets done because then they're not like anxious or feel like, oh, I have to sacrifice my well-being, and it allows people to kind of work longer, maybe less turnover, because people feel
Yeah.
like their health is taken care of. Because even just hearing you like, oh yeah, I was at Hallmark for 3 years, or this job for such and such like time or years, it's like, how? Because a lot of like the film industry, or just different like corporate positions, tend to be so like fast paced, and people like they wait till they burn out before they realize it's time to do something.
Yeah. It's no, so true to everything that you said, and yeah, it's just like it really is just a exciting time to be working. Like I'm just so glad that we're at a really crazy space with technology and health and all this stuff where it's like things continue to change. I
Hmm.
think and I hope for the better. I'm like very optimistic.
Oh my goodness. So I know today you must be like super proud of yourself, that the risk that you took as like a high school graduate to now come to like, film school, and now you're actually doing the thing. Do you ever take time to be like, wow, I'm proud of myself that I took a risk and it's actually paid off?
Yeah, it's so hard. I feel like we're both very humble people, or we were just talking about, right? Like the millennial mindset of like, oh my gosh, like I'm not going to give myself credit. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think the thing that I'm really proud of is like just the idea of making it giving the message that you can make it happen, right? So a
Mm,
lot of people are risk averse. They don't even want to take the first step to trying a career in entertainment because they've heard the stories about it's horrible, you
yeah.
can't get work, it's impossible. Again, I had no background in this, and I also, even though I was from LA, I had nobody in my family or friend circle or
Okay.
anybody pursuing film. And
Mhm.
even graduating from high school, maybe there was like one or two other kids that were pursuing film, but I didn't go to school with them or we didn't connect about
Right.
that of stuff. So I was truly able to break in on my own and yeah, just like I guess against all the odds that people have this misconception about. So that's why I really try to I'm like, I'm proud of that and that I've been able
Mhm.
to maintain work and sustain great relationships and love what I do.
Yes.
So I always try to impart that to other people too. Like, hey, this it's a hard career, as you know, it is crazy, it could be inconsistent, unpredictable, all that, but you can make it happen. It's not
Mhm.
impossible. And don't let statistics or preconceived
Mm.
notions, misconceptions scare you away from pursuing it if you really are passionate about this and feel that this is what you're called to do.
I love that. Such great advice. And it's really true. Sometimes we're so afraid to take the first step when that's really just the greatest barrier that we have to overcome. Because once you
Right.
take the first step, like it becomes easier. And most people are not rude with it. They're just like, oh, just not right now. Or, this is not the time. And they might even remember you or recommend you to somebody else. So definitely taking that step and kind of being bold. Like, I love that you were bold with it. You reached out and you made sure to kind of maintain connections with people and in a way that it feels very like authentic and very genuine, which I always appreciate about you. We could always like tell it to each other like how it is. So I think that's a wonderful advice. I feel like you, at least in my eyes, it's like you have it all figured out, you know exactly what to do. But is there any advice that you would give to your younger self?
Yeah, that's always a great question. It's truly being open-minded to things, I think, is
Mm,
huge. This is more, I guess, slightly more practical information,
okay.
but yeah, with film school, right? It's like, oh, I had this. I was dead set on like, oh, I love directing, and this is all that I want
Right.
to do, right?
Yeah.
But then as I start dabbling in other things, I'm like, yeah, I do want to try this, or I do want to talk to people from every facet on this call sheet to see what they're up to, and just keeping an open mind and being like, oh, I like this too, and let me
Hmm.
learn more about that, and having that humility and that open
Right.
mind and wide eyes and the energy to be like, yeah, I'm eager to learn. I'm eager to explore other things. I don't want to be comfortable or rigid in my thinking. I think that's really important. And the other part from that too is just really staying connected with a community.
Mm,
It's
got
important
it.
in so many different capacities, right? But I think one of the best things about LMU that you would probably feel as well is you
Mhm.
build such a community there, and it's not just school and academic, right? So
Right,
for film
right.
school, the people that I would say from my observation are struggling the most, either in professional careers, they jump ship or are really
Mhm,
having a hard time now, are the people that didn't take advantage of, yeah, I'm gonna make friendships. I want to foster relationships and mentorships and
mhm.
all this stuff while I'm in school and working. Because they could have
Right.
been the most technically smart or gifted filmmaker and know everything
Mhm.
about cinematography, but they didn't apply that practical knowledge working on a set or reaching
Right.
out to other
Helping
people.
others.
Yeah, and it's really, yeah, again, it goes back to having that positive attitude, like, be a people person, even if it's uncomfortable, if you're an introvert, get out there and meet people because it's so important, and that really will help you go, really, really far in this field, and I would like to think that applies to other career fields as well.
I agree. The importance of networking, connecting with people, because you never know when you guys could help one another out. And at the end of the day, what I've seen with the industry, and you know all too well, is people work with who they like to work with. It's not necessarily who's the best because they know that they can train them in those positions. And especially when you find a good community, people tend to stick with that same community. You'll see like the credits of a film, and you're like, okay. So you worked on this film together, y'all worked on this film together. So people like to stick to people that they feel are great human beings. And I think that's another thing too is serve. I remember we used to go to Devon Franklin's is like every once like a month or so he would just like kind of pour back into the community. And one thing that he really did say that I really appreciated was serve your way to the top. If you don't know what you're doing,
Mhm.
serve your way. Sometimes go down and then you'll come up because in helping others, not only do you discover what you want to do, especially if you don't know what you want to do, help other people because that's the best way that you can figure that out and be humble about it. I love that when you got the opportunity that kind of dictated like where your life would go as it is today, you didn't turn it down. Like most people would be like, development? Yeah,
Right,
that's not for me. Thanks though. But you took the risk. You're like, you know what? Let me just try this. And now you see that you're in a career where you're challenged. You're creating like a high amount of films each and every single year. And you also have that work life balance because for me, especially like working on set, like they said 12 hours was actually like 14, 15, 16. And I couldn't do it for the long, it wasn't worth my health. Like
yeah,
driving home, sleeping, going the next day. You're not even like eating well. Sometimes you don't get sunlight because it's like usually in a set. You're lucky if
yeah.
you're on location. But I was like, yeah, this is not for me. Long
No,
term, I could do it like, like a month, 2 months at a time, but like for years on end. And then like you're not even getting paid well. And then you look and you see like, wow, I'm so disconnected from all my friends because I'm tired. By the time I get home, I don't have time to connect with the people I love. Time is passing by. Even if you want to have family or relationships, like it's not really conducive for that, at least the way it's been set up. So seeing that there's so much freedom, that's why I love what's going on with like the influencer world and like TikTok and like you see Tubi now like with streaming and like I have it on my television as a smart TV, so I can access that, watch some free TV. So I like that it's been changing so that people can kind of create on their own terms and have the balance that they like.
yeah, for sure. And there's so many. I mean, I'm like you're preaching words of wisdom here for sure. But the two things that stuck out to me in response was yeah, like you can take risks because I think the other thing, especially for people that are freelancing that were
Hmm.
like me, that were like, oh, I'm afraid to go to a corporate, more structured world. It's like, hey, if you don't like this, like take the chance. And if you don't like this, you can always go back, right? Like you can
True.
always get back into freelancing or even at companies. I said, let me try Tubi, but I still maintain great Hallmark
Of
relationships, love
course.
the people there. So I'm like, if Tubi isn't the right fit for me, who knows? Maybe Hallmark can take me back or they can
Hmm.
lead me in the right direction. So it's
Hmm.
like, why not if you have at least some
True.
sort of interest? But you'll know, like if heart of hearts, if it doesn't feel right, but you just feel obligation to jump, like don't do that because
Yeah.
trust your it's so important. And yeah, the other thing too is, don't I think spiritually and holistically, like
Hmm.
don't sacrifice your happiness, right? Like some people that take those jobs that are paying really really well but they're miserable and not sleeping and hate who they
Hmm.
work with or their mental health is suffering, right? It's almost everybody that I know says, hey, I will take a little bit of a pay cut or
Right.
a title bump or lowering title or whatever
Hmm.
if it means that I'm going to be happier with what I'm
It's
doing.
true.
Right? It's so important because you're gonna burn out so quickly, even if it's all great money or great title or whatever. It's like
Right.
what's gonna what's gonna fill you wholly, right?
Right. So you can continue on and be a good person. And I know it's like very complex. Like we are both lucky to have, supportive families, but I know some people could be like, scared to take a pay cut because they're thinking like, what would my family think? Or, I come from a household with a single mom who was busting her butt. Like to
Yeah,
even tell her that I'm about to take a pay cut is like, what? Like sounds insane. But I feel like in this time, and I think, would you say that COVID, at least for me, I felt like COVID like was like a grand reset and everybody had the time to sit down. So I would like to think that I would still have the same mindset, but for sure after COVID, I'm like, it's not worth it. When you see people like, ill health, some people pass during the time. So it's just like,
it
yeah.
it's the weirdest time, and to think like how many it's years ago, but it
Right.
feels like so long ago, and also like it was just yesterday, and it's
Yeah.
like we're still facing COVID today, right? And
Right.
but yeah, it truly transformed so many people, and I think as horrible and as scary as when it first started outbreaking, how scary that was, but to see how people actually reached out for human connection or did that
Hmm.
inner work on themselves was really cool and inspiring to see. It truly was a mental test, but a great test, I think, for so many people to say, I need to think beyond just myself and
Right.
career. Like what about relationships, family, faith,
Hmm.
all these things are so important. that I
Right.
don't want to sacrifice because yeah, we only get one life, right?
It's true. And when work is taken away for a lot of people who were in person, that was kind of taken away. You really have to see, like, okay, what's important, and that's life. So, are
Yeah.
you leading the life that you want to lead? So, I love that you still say that even at your position. I think it's helpful for people because, some people could be like, oh, easy for you to say you're like a producer making big money, like doing big things, like what's going on. But to hear so many people at higher level positions saying similar things, it has meaning to it. So I like that now, like, we can kind of like take a different approach in the way we want to have our career. It's not just like, oh, just like
Mhm.
success in terms of my career, but it's like in success in terms of like, okay, my career, personal life, health. Because as you said, we only have one life to live.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that. So we're nearing the end. Oh, my AirPod just fell out. About to put that back in.
Oh, good.
So now we're nearing the end. At the end of each podcast, I asked everybody a couple of questions. So the first question was, what was a struggle bus moment for you?
Struggle bus moment was, like I said, actually making the risks of am I going to go into film? Am I going to try to do
Right.
this thing? That was a mental test of trying to work past the clutter and the noise of people saying don't do this or you're going to fail or whatever. And yeah, I was able to ride it out.
Love that. And the next question is, what moment were you most proud of yourself as it relates to your profession?
Oh, that's I think probably my first big premieres that I did for Tubi, when I got to do like red carpet premieres with all the step and repeat and
Yes.
watching a movie back with an audience and hearing people laugh and jump and scream and all that stuff, you're just like, oh wow, like I got to make this thing that people are really responding to and passionate about. I get to work with great people
Hmm.
and give hugs to everybody at the end. And you're just like, wow, this is such a cool thing where you're entertaining, but also like impacting so many lives with the people that you hire, the people that
Right.
are watching stuff. Yeah, I think that's like a really cool thing.
I love that. And I love that I love the moments where you get to see how your work is received, see everybody enjoy it. I know that has to be so fulfilling because, with creative work, part of it is like you. So
Yeah.
it's nice that like people respond well. And I love that moment for you.
I still remember really quick, Jess, when
Hmm.
when you had to screen, you know how we had to screen all of our thesis projects in
Yes.
the
In the
theater,
theater in front of
and I remember
everybody.
you were so nervous, right, going into it of like, "Oof, we have to watch this all together," and then people were laughing and loved
Yeah.
it, and we're just like, "This is the cute, like such a fresh rom-com," and I just remembered that, like, that must have been so satisfying for you too to see all of your hard work pay off because I know you worked so hard on that movie.
Yeah, definitely one of the highlight moments I will say. And thank you for remembering that.
Yeah,
Because I put like everything into the movie and a lot of it was like, I was trying to get donations because like with film school, our film school, we had to raise the funds for our own film. So I was working my butt off of my little work study
right, right.
job trying to fund this film. So, and like, I had like at that time, my thesis class, it was like only like maybe one or two women. And then it was just like all guys, much like film school. So like at first, like, I don't know if they were really like understanding the idea, but once like they started to laugh, I'm like, not y'all laughing at my film, not you guys enjoying this. So that really felt like really rewarding. So thank you for
Yeah,
remembering that. That
yeah, of
brought
course.
back a happy memory for me.
Good.
Okay, so the next question is, you kind of covered it, but again, what is your definition of success?
I ooh, it's so hard. It's like it sounds so simple, but I
Yeah.
think success is doing what you love and paying forward the lessons and values that you take on and everything that you learn, paying that forward to other people and
Right.
having that fill out that life. Like that's why I would say success for me in the industry, right, is
Hmm.
like I love what I do, but I love being creative and doing all this stuff. But even the better part is touching multiple lives in every capacity, right? Like touching the
Yes.
people that are watching the movies, touching the people that I get to hire or who hire me,
Hmm.
um, there's so much synergy, and it goes beyond just your day to day, but also
Hmm.
like how does that align with your values and your approach to life itself.
Yeah. I love that so, so much. Has that always been your definition of success?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so. I think
Yeah.
it continued to evolve, but it's I knew that it has to go beyond just like I numbers and metrics, right? Like it
Right.
can't just be like a monetary number
Hmm.
or an efficiency outrage. Where's the heart in that? Like I'm
Yeah.
such a people person, as I know you are. So it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, where's the emotional component to it? And yeah, I think it's important.
I love that. And our final question is, what piece of advice would you give to people who are looking to advance professionally?
Yes,
Mhm.
the things that I would say is, work hard in school, get to work while you're in school. If you can take advantage
Yes.
of internships or research, relationships, mentorships, anything like that, be proactive beyond just the classroom and stay in good touch with people that you work with, because I think in any field, right, like people will
Mhm.
always look out for jobs for you, or
Right.
be a shoulder to lean on if you're going through hard times, or to reap in your successes. So yeah, go beyond just the textbook and classes and exams. There's so much more out there that's going to propel you forward.
It's so true because the class, the A, whatever output you got from that class, that's not what's gonna like get you your next job or position. So talk to people. Like remember people, people, people.
Right.
That's truly everybody say, oh yeah, your network is everything, but it really, really is. So yeah, I love
Yeah.
that piece of advice. Well,
Yeah.
Brett, thank you so, so much. You gave everybody just obviously just a good conversation between me and you, but like I know everybody gleaned so much from that. And I love that you're continuing to pay it forward almost as a mission. So I appreciate you coming on today and taking time out of your busy schedule to talk with me and everybody. And I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jessica. This was such an honor to talk with you. I love everything that you're doing and stand for.
Thank
So
you.
this was the absolute pleasure. And yeah, I'm wishing good luck to everybody else out there. And people can always reach out to if they need anything from me. I'm here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was such an amazing conversation with Brett. Now you guys see why he's so amazing, such a rock star. Please watch the podcast, share with your friends. And if you want to connect with Brett, I'll send out all that contact info for you. Until next time, besties.